It's terrible. I found out that my wife had a one-night stand with her friend. Should I divorce her? I had always believed that my relationship with Kate was unshakable. At 32 years old, I felt confident in our love and the strong bond we had built over the past 9 years. We had been married for 4 of those years, and our life together was full of warmth, support, and trust. Our conversations flowed easily, disagreements were rare, and even our intimate life continued to grow stronger as time went on. One thing we had both made very clear from the start was that cheating was absolutely unacceptable if it ever happened. It would be the end of our relationship. That fateful weekend began like any other. Kate had planned to visit her family, something she had done many times before. Before she left on Friday night, we had a small argument about keeping the house tidy. It was nothing serious, just one of those minor spats that sometimes occur in a close relationship. Even though our conversation had been brief and a bit tense that evening, I trusted her completely. I knew that later on Saturday, when she went out to meet some friends at a local bar, she would enjoy herself just like she always did. The night before we both went to sleep, I sent Kate a simple text message, a small gesture to wish her a nice night. I thought nothing more about it, confident in the strength of our bond. But when I awoke on Sunday morning, something was already off. My phone showed a missed call from Kate at 4 a.m. My heart skipped a beat as I dialed her number immediately to make sure she was okay. There was no answer. I tried calling again and again, but every attempt was met with silence. Then, about an hour later, I received a short message from her. She said she was fine and that she would be driving back soon. When Kate finally arrived home in the late afternoon, the change in her was unmistakable. Gone was the vibrant woman I loved, replaced by someone who looked utterly devastated. Her face was stained with tears, her makeup was missing a rare sight, and she looked as if she had lost all of her energy. I could feel the weight of the situation immediately. Despite my instinct to comfort her with a warm embrace, she pulled away and barely uttered a word. I gently urged her to sit down on the couch and offered her a cup of tea, hoping that a calm environment would coax her into talking about what was wrong. After a few minutes, the dam of her emotions broke. Kate began to cry uncontrollably for at least 10 minutes. I sat there, doing my best to soothe her with gentle words and soft touches, but nothing seemed to reach her. Finally, between sobs, she managed to tell me the unthinkable. She admitted that she had slept with someone the previous night after being at the bar. In that instant, something inside me shattered. I felt a surge of disbelief and pain so intense that I couldn't even think clearly. I jumped up from the couch, grabbed my keys, and drove away in my car without a second thought. I didn't know where I was headed at first, but soon I found myself driving to a nearby park. I parked my car and began to walk slowly around the quiet park, letting my mind wander in confusion. My phone kept ringing. Kate was calling over and over, but in my state of shock, I turned it off, unable to face the sound of her desperate voice. The minutes turned into an hour as I wandered aimlessly, trying to come to grips with the reality of what I had just learned. After my time alone, I returned home in a daze. I made my way to our bedroom and, almost mechanically, grabbed 2 suitcases from the garage. I began stuffing them with some of Kate's clothes and shoes, tossing the items into the bags without any clear purpose, other than to remove reminders of what had happened. I left the suitcases by the front door, a silent declaration of the end of something that had once meant the world to me. Inside the house, I found Kate sitting on the living room floor, curled up into a ball and sobbing uncontrollably. My heart ached to see her like that, but the hurt I felt was too raw to allow for any immediate comfort. I called Kate's best friend, who lived nearby, and explained that Kate needed a place to stay. I told her friend to pick Kate up and that she could explain everything later. I told Kate I was stepping out for an hour, expecting that a little time apart might help both of us clear our heads. Kate clutched at my legs, desperate to stop me from leaving, but I felt numb and detached from the situation. By the time I returned home, both Kate and the suitcases were gone. Monday came, and with a clearer head, I finally answered one of the many calls Kate had made. I told her that I needed her to send me an email detailing everything that had happened the previous night. I warned her that if she left anything out, there would be no hope of any reconciliation between us. That email arrived later that Monday evening, but even now, I haven't brought myself to open it. Instead, I've been trying to carry on with my day-to-day life working, exercising, and sleeping as if I were on autopilot. In the days that followed, my phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls from both Kate and people who cared about us. One of her friends even showed up at my house, demanding an explanation. I curtly told her to speak to Kate and close the door in her face. In the meantime, I had already begun taking steps towards divorce. I had spoken with divorce lawyers, moved money into separate accounts, and blocked Kate and all of her friends on every platform. Despite the whirlwind of emotions, I felt strangely numb. I wasn't angry or overtly upset, just detached, as if I were observing everything from a distance. Then, a note appeared through our door. It was from Kate asking me to meet her the next day. I felt conflicted. I wasn't sure if meeting her would change anything, or if it would simply reopen wounds that were slowly starting to close. The uncertainty left me questioning whether there was any point in trying to reconcile, or if I was simply caught in a state of emotional inertia where I felt like a robot, incapable of feeling the full force of my own emotions. I needed time to process everything. I began to wonder if my numbness was normal, and if there was any way to snap out of it. All the while, I remained firm in my resolve that the betrayal was something I couldn't easily forgive, even though a small part of me still longed for the old days, when everything between Kate and me was perfect. Eventually, after reading some comments and reflecting on my situation, I decided to meet with Kate, but I made a conscious decision not to read the email she had sent. The following day, when I opened the door to let her in, I was struck by how terrible she looked. Kate came to me trying to offer a hug and muttering apologies, but I stopped her gently. Instead, we sat down to have a serious conversation. I told her that I was recording our discussion so that I could later review every detail, and she agreed. I then asked her to explain, in her own words, what had happened the night before, making it clear that I hadn't opened her email. Kate began to speak, and as she did, the pieces of the previous night fell into place. She explained that she had been at the bar with two friends I knew well and liked. She talked about what she had drunk that night, and I was surprised to learn that she had only consumed the same amount we would normally have when we went out for dinner, a few glasses of wine and a cocktail. She admitted that she was only slightly tipsy that night. The conversation took a more painful turn when she mentioned that one of her friends, Sarah, had a younger brother named Max. Max, a 27-year-old man, had apparently been picking them up around midnight. It was a running joke among their group that Max had a major crush on Kate ever since high school, a fact I had heard before and accepted as harmless teasing. According to Kate, the group of four had gone out to get some food, and afterward, Max ended up dropping everyone off one by one. Soon, it was just him and Kate. Kate explained that she had felt tired and didn't want Max to drive her the 20 minutes to her parents' house after a long day of work, so she decided to order an Uber from his apartment. Once inside his apartment, she couldn't get an Uber, and Max suggested that she should crash in his bed while he took the sofa. He promised that he would drop her off in the morning. Despite his offer, Kate refused and continued trying to order an Uber. It was then, as they sat on Max's bed, that he kissed her. Caught up in the moment and overwhelmed by a mixture of emotions, Kate kissed him back. Before long, they found themselves in bed together, and she later confirmed that the encounter was entirely consensual. Afterward, Kate broke down in tears, overwhelmed by guilt and regret. Max then drove her home. Once she got home, she cried for another hour, and at some point, she tried to call me to confess what had happened. Throughout the conversation, we had to pause several times because Kate's sobs grew louder and more hysterical. She kept saying that it was a huge mistake, that she had been caught up in the moment, and that despite everything, she only loved me. No matter how many times she repeated these words, I could not find solace in them. At that moment, I realized that the story she was telling didn't even seem to add up logically. Even though I knew that sometimes emotions could make a person say anything, the inconsistencies hurt even more. I told her that I was done. I was going to continue with the divorce preparations. Before ending the conversation, I made it clear that for the next month, we would live apart with no contact. I also laid out some conditions. We both had to remain faithful. We would each get a full STD panel done, and Kate needed to tell our mutual friends and family that the reason for our separation was her infidelity, not just a random argument. I insisted that if she stuck to these conditions, I would be willing to meet with her again later to see if there was any possibility of reconciliation. Kate agreed to these terms with a certain enthusiasm, although she made it clear that she did not expect me to remain faithful to her. The conversation ended with a painful understanding that our future together was uncertain. In the days that followed, I found myself struggling to come to terms with the enormity of what had happened. I received messages from mutual friends and even Kate's family, many of whom were angry and disappointed. They had heard from Kate that I had kicked her out over an argument, and they were coming to my house demanding an explanation. I simply told them to speak to Kate if they wanted to know more, and I closed the door in their faces. I continued with my divorce preparations, feeling more and more like a machine, carrying out actions on autopilot. I wasn't sure if this numbness was a natural reaction or something more troubling, but at the moment, I felt detached from my own life. Now, I am left with a heavy heart and a mind full of questions. Is it normal to feel like a robot after such a betrayal? Can I ever snap out of this state of numbness? Should I ever try to reconcile with someone who has broken my trust so deeply? These questions haunt me every day as I struggle to find a way forward. Every night I replay the events in my head. I remember the sound of Kate's voice, the look of devastation on her face, and the overwhelming feeling of betrayal. At the same time, I cannot deny that a part of me still remembers the good times, the nights we laughed together, the way we used to talk about our future, and the promise we once made to always be honest with each other. But now, those memories are tainted by the knowledge that something irreparable has occurred. I continue to move money into separate accounts and keep my distance, blocking her and all her friends on every platform. Life goes on, but it is as if I am living a life that belongs to someone else. I go to work, exercise, and try to sleep, all the while feeling that I am just going through the motions. I know I need time to process everything, but I also wonder if there will ever be a time when I can truly move past this. The note Kate left asking me to meet has only deepened my inner conflict. On one hand, a part of me still wants answers, a chance to understand how things went so terribly wrong, and perhaps, in some small way, to find closure. On the other hand, I fear that reopening the conversation might only cause more pain. I worry that if I let myself get close again, I might be setting myself up for further hurt. The decision feels like a delicate balance between holding on to what we had and protecting myself from further betrayal. In the quiet hours of the night, I often wonder if I made the right decision to insist on that email. I need every detail spelled out to know that nothing has been left unsaid. Yet, the thought of reading those words, of knowing every single detail, fills me with dread. Part of me wishes I could go back in time and prevent any of this from happening, but I know that is impossible. I also think about the reactions of the people around me, friends, family, and even Kate's own relatives. Their anger and hurt, the harsh words thrown my way, all serve as painful reminders that our private pain has become public. It is as if our once private struggles are now fodder for gossip and judgment, further complicating an already difficult situation. As I try to reconcile my past and present, I am left with the lingering question: is there any point in trying to mend what has been broken? I am 99% convinced that the end is near, that our marriage has reached a point of no return. Yet, there is that final, stubborn 1% of hope that perhaps, after a month of separation and reflection, something might change. But even if that hope remains, I know that moving forward would be a slow and painful process, a journey that might lead to healing, or simply to further heartbreak. Right now, I stand at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. The decisions I make in the coming days will shape my future, and I am burdened by the weight of that responsibility. All I know is that I cannot continue living in a state of numbness forever. I must find a way to feel again, whether that means healing the wounds of the past or embracing a new beginning without Kate. Only time will tell if reconciliation is ever possible, or if this painful separation is truly the best path forward for both of us. In the end, I am left with the bittersweet memories of a love that once was, and the harsh reality of a betrayal that has forever altered my life. I continue to grapple with my emotions, trying to piece together the fragments of trust and love that were so carefully built over the years. Though the road ahead is uncertain, I know one thing for sure. The decision I make must be true to my heart, even if that heart feels broken and numb right now. Damn it, My wife cheated on me with a male colleague because she was bored with our sex life. I met her 3 years ago, and after all that time, I thought our love would last forever. 6 months into our engagement, I found myself questioning everything I believed in. I had been so certain that our future was set, that nothing could shake the bond we shared. But life has a way of revealing secrets when you least expect them. At first, I never paid much attention to the long hours she spent away from home. She worked for a large financial institution, and I understood that her job was demanding. Most evenings, she would return home very late, sometimes around 10 or 11 at night. And by the time I got a glimpse of her at home, she was already asleep or too tired to speak. I trusted that her late nights were all just part of the job. I even admired her dedication and professionalism. I believed that her career was a reflection of her ambition, not a sign of hidden truths. However, about a month ago, things started to change. She began coming home much later than usual, often around midnight. I noticed that even when she was home, she seemed distant and uninterested in our conversations. Instead of sitting down and sharing the events of her day, she was always glued to her phone, as if it was the only window into another world. At first, I tried to brush it off. Perhaps her job had become even more demanding, or maybe she was just exhausted, but the change in her behavior was unmistakable. One evening, I stayed up later than usual and I was still awake when she returned home. As soon as she walked in, I noticed that something was off. She looked disheveled, and it was clear from her demeanor that she had been drinking. I asked her politely where she had been, and she mumbled something about attending a late dinner with her boss. But something about her explanation didn't sit right with me. It was full of holes and inconsistencies, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something from me. That night, after she went to bed, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with doubt and suspicion. I couldn't help but wonder what was really going on. The next morning, I decided to check her phone. I wasn't looking for evidence of wrongdoing, I just needed to know if there was any truth behind the changes I had noticed. What I found shattered my world. There were messages from one of her work friends talking about going on dates and hiding details about her life from me. Every message confirmed what I had feared. She had been unfaithful. When I confronted her the next day, the argument was explosive. I demanded to know why she would cheat on me after all the years we had spent together. In the midst of her defensive and contradictory explanations, she finally admitted that she had grown bored with our sex life. According to her, the excitement of trying something new with someone else had become more appealing than the familiarity we shared. I listened in shock as she explained that the novelty of being with another man was a way to escape the routine of our relationship. I had spent years perfecting my techniques, studying the Kama Sutra and Tantra, and practicing various approaches to keep our intimacy vibrant. I believed I was good enough, that our connection was special. Yet hearing her say that our sex life was boring and unfulfilling was a blow I wasn't prepared for. It hurt even more because it wasn't just about physical intimacy, it felt like a rejection of all that I had worked for in our relationship. In that moment, I realized that our dreams of a happy future together were nothing more than illusions. The person I thought I knew had chosen to seek excitement elsewhere. With a heavy heart, I asked her to leave, retrieve the engagement ring, and cut all ties with the person I once loved so deeply. I tried to understand if there was something I could have done differently, some way to keep the spark alive. But deep down, I knew that the fault did not lie with me. Her decision to look for novelty elsewhere was a choice she made on her own, a choice that ultimately ended the life we had planned together. Since then, I have been struggling to process the loss and the betrayal. Every day brings a mix of sorrow, anger, and confusion. I see her new relationship on social media, and it reminds me of what I had, what could have been. I wonder how long it will be before she repeats this pattern with someone else, or if that new person will eventually feel the sting of her disloyalty just as I did. Despite the pain, I am slowly starting to heal. I try to focus on the positives, looking for lessons in this painful experience. I am beginning to see that sometimes love can be complicated, and that not all endings are completely black and white. I still believe in the possibility of a loving, committed relationship, but I have learned to be more cautious and to trust my instincts a little more. This experience has left me with many unanswered questions. I still don't fully understand why our intimacy wasn't enough, or how a connection that I believed was strong could be so easily undermined by boredom and a desire for something different. It is a mystery that I may never solve, and it is something I carry with me as I try to move forward. As I continue to process this heartbreak, I share my story not for sympathy, but to understand that I am not alone. I hope that by putting my feelings into words, I can find some clarity and perhaps help others who have faced similar betrayals. Life moves on, and although the pain is still raw, I believe that with time, I will find peace and maybe even love again.